Well, this is great. I'm very happy to have 4 of you in live. Does make teaching so much easier when there are actual people that you're talking to. So I do appreciate you taking the time to come for real to class. I'm going to have a couple of you confirm how you say your names. Brent, I think I can manage. Devin, I can manage. Dayon? I can't hear you. You might need to turn your microphone up. I can see that you're speaking. And then Vicente?
Placente.
Say that again, sorry.
Placente.
Placente.
Vicente, okay.
Yeah.
Not a hard C. All right. Thank you. Okay. All right, well, welcome. I'm sorry we're having to do this virtually, but I know a lot of you have jobs and things, so it will hopefully work out for the best for everybody. You can come and be dialed in live when it's convenient, and then there will be a recording in the Collaborate Ultra classroom for when you can't come at 4:30 Mountain Time. So today what I would like to do is kind of show you the way around my Blackboard setup so that you can find things, and go through the syllabus and then do a little bit of introduction to what the class is and introduce you to the beloved APA manual. I think we'll start with looking at the Blackboard page. So I'm going to share, let's have a look down here, who's leaving me messages? Oh, don't worry, Dion. Okay, Dion, don't worry. I will keep an eye out for chat bubbles down the bottom here if you have a question. Alright, so let's go here first of all. Alright. Okay, so here's our homepage on Blackboard. The required textbooks have been up there for a couple of weeks now, so I'm hoping that most people have managed to get hold of those. It is important that you hang on to, at the end of this course, I know oftentimes students sell their books, do not sell your APA manual. Okay, you're going to need that for all your classes in this degree plan. All your papers and projects and things will have to be APA formatted. So don't get rid of that one. Okay, so we've got a group of you dialed in, so hopefully most people have paid attention to the notice. There is a startup guidelines document here. It's just some tips on, getting ready for being in a graduate class. So you can read that at your leisure. The syllabus is there. We'll have a look at that in a little while. And for those of you who might not have taken class at Eastern before, there's a participation agreement to complete, and that's linked to financial aid. So try to get that done as quickly as you can once you've read the syllabus thoroughly. Okay? And then I wanted to just point out where you can find a couple of things we're going to talk about in the syllabus. So announcements are over here on the left-hand column. Your email messages link is also there. And then obviously the classroom link. If you want to reach me during my office hours, you want to use this link here. It will take you into a Collaborate Ultra room. It's just not the room for class, okay? So use that other link. The assignments link is here. You can't see it yet because it has been an insane week and it's not ready. So hopefully I will have it ready tomorrow morning, at least for the very first assignment for you. Otherwise I'm going to have to start extending the deadlines right from the word go. And then notes are over here as well. So the PowerPoint notes, other reading, and I'll come back and show you that once we've gone through the syllabus a little bit. Okay? So, let me come back here, and we will change out from Blackboard to the syllabus. Here we go. Alright, why does this thing keep coming up? That's frustrating. Okay. So, first off, there's my office number and my office phone number, but I will not be in my office this semester. So please don't ring and leave a message there because I almost certainly will not get to pick it up. We're going to use the email messages facility in Blackboard that I just showed you, and I'll say a bit more about that in a moment. My office hours, unfortunately, are all in the afternoons this semester because I'm teaching every morning. But if my office hours don't work for you because you're at work, or you have another class at that time or something like that, don't worry about it. Just drop me an email and say that you'd like to speak to me and can we make an appointment. And we can make an appointment for a different time of the day. I don't typically do student appointments at weekends or after 6 o'clock, so hopefully we don't have anyone on a crazy timetable that we can't manage either early in the morning, a lunch break, or before 6. But we'll work it out, don't worry about it. I will make myself be more flexible if necessary, okay? So there's some information here that's repeated on Blackboard, so you'll have seen this. Textbooks, extra readings are in the class notes. Okay, and then student responsibilities. So embarrassingly, you couldn't do the first couple really because I forgot to open the class notes file for you. But it's open now, so there was some pre-reading to try to do for today, but don't worry, you can catch up with it at your leisure. If you can get the bit of the APA manual or the bit of the textbook, or if there's an article to read done before class, so that if you've got questions on that and how it fits in with what we're doing in class that day, that would be great. I know it's difficult if you're working full-time and you've got 2 or 3 classes going, to try to keep up with all the reading is quite onerous at times. Do what you can, okay? The books are, this is your HPE manual, so you guys are on the newish 7th edition. It came out last year. It's vastly superior to the 6th edition in my view. And the layout is much, much more user-friendly, so it's way easier to actually thumb through and find things that you need. And then if you don't have it yet, the textbook is very applied, very easy to read. It's probably, if we had a research methods class in our undergrad degree, it's probably the book I would use at the undergrad level. But I like it for the grad class because many of you come, especially if you come out of our program, many of you come from programs where you don't do any research work as an undergraduate. So some of the graduate research texts are a little bit heavy going, in my opinion, and they're not very amenable. You know, you're not going to want to kind of sit there and flick through them and actually go, oh wow, that's cool, I could do that, right? And what I want you to come away with at the end of this semester is research is really fun, right? Research is the most fun. And that R word, you know, everybody goes, research. And you kind of come into the class thinking, oh, this isn't really, I wish we didn't have to do this class. But I want you to understand how fun it is, right? Once you get your teeth into a question that you're interested in, you can spend hours looking through databases for articles. Because once you start, one article leads to another article, leads to another train of thought, and there's just so much information out there that you would not even begin to imagine is available, okay? So hopefully you'll get excited about it as we work through the semester. A note here, I think it's on the homepage of Blackboard as well, it should be. Maybe I forgot. But the final presentation, so your final assignment, will run the last 2 weeks. So it'll run the week before finals week and finals week. Although at the moment there are only 9 people, so we may not need to split across 2 weeks, which would be nice. But as I need for you to attend the final presentations live this way through Collaborate, okay? Because you're going to grade each other as well as me grade, and then all our grades get lumped together for that final presentation. Plus it's a chance to support each other as you're presenting. It's really difficult to present to an empty room, right? So I want everybody there so that you can all support each other, you can ask each other questions, and make it a real experience for you all, okay? So please work with your coaches or your boss or whoever, and do everything you can to be available for those last 2 weeks at 4:30 Mountain Time, okay? All your assignments are due by 11 o'clock on the date listed in the syllabus. However, this semester, and look, I'm not an online teacher. It won't take you long to work that out because I'll goof up regularly. And what I learned teaching online last semester was that closing the assignment on the due date was a really bad plan. So it caused student stress and it caused me extra work. So we're not doing that. Instead of closing the assignment will be available for you for the semester. And so you can submit it and it will be accepted and graded when you get it in. But if it's late, there'll be a deduction of 1% per day that it's late after the due date. And that might seem a little evil on my part, but honestly, it's for your own good, right? Because it will help to keep you on task. It's real easy when you don't have a deadline and there isn't any repercussion for handing things in late to just let things build up, particularly when you're busy with a full-time job. And so the point of this is to try to keep you on task so that you hand things in, you get it done, you get it off your plate, and you can get on with something else. Okay? The formatting idea is important because A, it makes it much easier to use the rubric, so I can give you better feedback. Plus, it's just professional. Now you're a grad student, you know, there are going to be requirements for how you hand things in. So if you hand something in and it's not formatted the way I asked for it, I will return it and tell you you need to resubmit it. Okay? So that's that little bit. Then this is what we're going to be playing with. So you're going to do a practice article. So the one that you'll do this week is not going to be for grade. All right? It's going to be for you to get feedback from me on how to do the job, because I'm assuming that most, if not all of you, have not read tons of research articles and have not had to summarize them into a much smaller piece of work. Okay? So we're going to do a practice one first of all. Then there'll be 4 that we do for a grade. And then just before midterm, around midterm, you're going to come up with your own purpose statement. All right, so I want you to start thinking, as you start reading the articles I give you, start thinking, what is it I'm interested in? What would I like to look at and read about, right? Because for the second half of the semester, you're going to work with your purpose statement and you're going to read research and summarize your own research papers that you find, all right, to support this purpose statement. So coming up with the purpose statement is quite important because you want it to be something that interests you so that you don't mind reading about it and researching it for the rest of the semester, all right? It needs to be something, we'll go over this idea again nearer the time, but it needs to be something that is unique in that it fills a hole in the literature that you're reading. So, for example, in my case, I'm very interested in 2 to 5-year-olds. So when I read research and all the research is on teenagers or on pubertal children, and I can't find anything about that idea with younger children, it's not that the idea has to be brand new, although it can be, but the purpose question, the statement has to be brand new, right? So I might take the idea from a couple of other papers and switch it to, can I look at that idea with preschoolers? Okay? So you don't have to get panicky. This isn't due for a while yet. Okay? So you've got plenty of time to start thinking about this idea, and you can always talk to me in office hours or on an appointment about your thoughts and whether or not they will work. Okay? Then we're going to do, once we get to midterm, so if you have a look here, there's only 30% of your grade when we get to midterm, okay? So the majority of your grade in this class comes after midterm. And that's because learning how to summarize, well, A, learning how to find good research, right? B, learning how to summarize it appropriately are steep learning curves, okay? So I don't want to put lots of grade here at the beginning when you're on that steep learning curve, okay? So by midterm, you'll have most of the skill set that you need to do well on the big pieces of work that come in the second half of the semester, all right? So you're going to do an annotated bibliography for your purpose statement, all right? And you get 2 attempts at that. So you'll hand in the first one, that'll get you lots of feedback from me, and then you'll hand in the second one, hopefully you'll put the stuff right from the first one, and the second one has 25%, and then the presentation that I mentioned is 15%, and your participation in that presentation is 10%. So that's why I want to make sure that you all start clearing your calendars and getting ready to be available on those last 2 Thursdays. All right? Okay. Okay, email policy. All right, so I really want you to email me, unless it's, well no, because I don't advise graduate students, so that's okay. So I want you to email me through Blackboard, all right? For several reasons. One, Blackboard gives me a note telling me that there's an email sitting there waiting that I haven't answered. So I can't lose it, right? I get piles of email every day in my Outlook. If you email me there, and like I haven't answered any student emails since yesterday morning because I've had a deadline to do that my chair told me took priority, right? So if you emailed me yesterday morning in Outlook, you almost certainly won't have got a reply. I try to keep up with the Blackboard ones because there's not so many in Blackboard, right? So I'm not going to answer emails about class in Outlook unless I get a message from IT saying that Blackboard is broken, right? And the only way you can get hold of me is through Outlook, okay? So please make sure that you download the Blackboard app so that if you're out and about and you have a question, you can still get hold of me. You don't need to use Outlook, and hopefully that will work just fine for us all. If you need any accommodations, make sure that you talk to the Accessibility Resources Center office and get them to email me and let me know, although we don't have exams per se in this class. So, and there's quite a lot of time for most of the assignments. The summaries are the quickest turnaround because you've got one every week for the first couple of weeks. Academic integrity, it's kind of hard to cheat when there isn't an exam, but do pay attention, and we'll talk a lot about the idea of plagiarism. If you are working, what would be really great is that you guys get to know each other. It's quite a small class, thank goodness, this semester compared to last semester. So, you know, it would be nice for you to get to know each other, swap phone numbers, chat about assignments and things like that. Just make sure that although you're chatting and sharing ideas, what you hand in is your own piece of work, okay? There are readings in the folders, I'll show you that in a minute. If you'd like to submit a draft of your work before the final submission, please do that. All right, don't do it through the assignment tab though, because the assignment tab usually only lets you put in one thing, right? So if you're going to send a draft in, attach it to an email and make sure that you say in the title of the email, this is a draft, so that I know it's something I need to look at and send back to you, okay? And then if you send me drafts, I will do the best I can to give you some feedback and get it back to you before the deadline for that piece of work, all right? So don't hand it in at 10 o'clock in the morning when it's due at 11 o'clock that night, because that probably won't happen, right? I teach every day, so I don't have, you know, if you send it to me on the day, chances are it won't get turned around, okay? What else do we have here? Oh, schedule. Okay, here we go. So, I've tried to set this up so it's really clear for you. We've got the week of school, we've got the date of the class for that week, we've got what we're going to be covering that week, we've got what is due, and we have a deadline. Okay? As I said, the assignment won't close on that deadline. You'll still be able to access it if you can't make it. Now, here's the thing. If you can't make it for a really valid reason, like your Wi-Fi crashes, or you've got 5 pieces of work due at the same time and you're running behind getting them all completed, try not to leave it till the last minute. Plan ahead. But, you know, things come up that means that deadline just might not work for you, okay? That's all right, then just email me and say, Dr. Wall, I can't make the 8th of February, but I could have it to you on the 9th or the 10th. Is it okay to have an extension? Right? Now, if you email and you say, well, I haven't done it, so I'm going to hand it in late, then it's going to get a deduction. But if you let me know ahead of time that you really have a reason why that deadline doesn't work, then I can extend the deadline and you don't have to have the deduction, right? As I said, the deduction's not really there to be punitive, it's there to try to keep you on track. Okay? So, next week we'll go over the purpose statement idea again. We have spring break, yay! And then we've got quite a lot of time where you've got a week where you can work on things, right? And I'll be dialed into the Collaborate classroom, so if you have a question you can come and ask me, or you can just work on your own. And then here are the final presentations. It's currently the 6th of May and the 13th of May. All right? Any questions on the syllabus at the moment? What I would like you to do is to make sure that you read that syllabus quite thoroughly before you do your participation agreement, all right? Because the participation agreement is basically you saying, I read the syllabus, I understand what I have to do for this class, okay? So I would prefer that you read the syllabus very carefully, and if there's something where you go, I don't really know what the heck she means there, then get in touch with me and let's clean that up first before you do your participation agreement. I think I have to report next Tuesday to financial aid, so we've got some time to make sure that you understand everything that's there. Any questions? Oh, hi, Eric. I didn't see you sneak in there. Okay. All right, what do I want to look at next? Oh, we want to go back to the Blackboard page and have a look at the tabs. All right, so let's look at the class notes tab first of all. You won't be able to see that top thing. Ignore that. That's when you're in student mode, you can't see that. Let's just put you in student mode and then it'll look neater. Okay. So this was the reading I was hoping you would do for today that I forgot to let you know about. The week 1 folder has today's PowerPoint and then the readings for this week, and then a note of what readings you've got to get done for next week, and they're in the week 2 folder. So there should be, don't know if you can see this, yeah, there's a document there that tells you what the reading is in the APA manual and in the textbook. All right, so that reading will be in the week 2 folder. Okay? So I hope that that's relatively easy to follow. The week 1 folder has today's PowerPoint, today's readings, and the note of what you've got to read for next week. All right? Okay, let me come back into my mode so that I can show you. The assignment tab will be over there on the left, all right? And in the assignment tab will be a folder that gives you some more help for APA, so different websites you can go to, like Purdue OWL, to get help with APA. There is an online writing lab that you can access and get some help at. And then there'll be a folder for the article summaries, so the practice summary will be in there. I was hoping to have enough time to use some different articles this semester. It's just been a bit silly at the moment. So there's the rules and the template for the summary, which we'll go over. And then there's a folder for the purpose statement, a folder for the annotated bibliographies, and a folder for the presentation. All right? And in those folders, if I need you to actually submit something, there'll be an assignment clearly identified for you to click on to submit your paper. I would ask if any of you are working on Macs or anything that is not a PC with Microsoft, please don't send me things like dot pages documents, because I can't open those. And then I'm going to have to send it back to you. So what I need when you submit some work, it's got to be in a Word format or at worst a PDF format. Okay? I can't put feedback in a PDF format is the problem at home. So a Word document is preferable because then I can actually type in and give you feedback. Okay? What else there? Anything else about the Blackboard site that you'd like to know? Said, I'm not very techy, so it's relatively simple. I think if you spend a little bit of time just digging around, you'll find everything you need. and if you can't, just drop me an email and ask me where I put it, because it's probably that it's there and I forgot to open it. Like I loaded it and I forgot to press the button that says open, because that's the sort of daft thing that I do, okay? So if I told you, or the syllabus told you, that you should be able to see something and you can't find it, just let me know, because it's almost certainly the big black hole that is my brain. Okay. Any questions about Blackboard or the syllabus at the moment? Otherwise, we will start looking at some APA, please. Everybody good? Remember, I can't see your faces, so if you're sitting there nodding your head saying, yeah, everything's absolutely fine, I can't see that. Okay, you've got to let me know. Hi! Okay. Let's stay on. All right, so let's get going with some notes, and then we can have a look at the article summary. Let's make that full size so it looks a bit smarter. There we go. All right. Oh, I forgot to upgrade that. They're not in Wimber anymore, they're in Collaborate Ultra. And if you don't know where to find the recording, let me know at the end and I can show you. Because it's kind of hidden away in the Collaborate room. So, you know, people get nervous about the idea of research, but all research is trying to find out the answer to something, right? So if you buy a pair of running shoes from one of the online stores, and they have a deal where they say, you know, you can try these out indoors, and if they don't work, send them back, right? And you go, oh, well, that's okay, good plan. Then I'll buy these 3 pairs of shoes. I can try them all, and I can send back the 2 I don't want. That's basically research, right? That's what it is, okay? So it's just a fancy word for trying to find something out about something you're interested in, okay? So why do we do it? Why do we read it? Because we have to expand our understanding of things, right? The human beings are inherently inquisitive people. And so when we have a question, if we don't get an answer to that question, it kind of nags away at us. So doing the research can often answer that question for us, right? And, you know, we want to, hopefully, you're already lifelong learners. If not, by the end of the graduate degree, I really hope you will have developed a love of learning, because that's what keeps us vital, right? It's what makes looking forward to retirement, right? Is what can I do? What can I learn? Right? I can't wait to retire, because there's at least 3 classes I'm going to take the minute I retire. Right? I want to learn American Sign Language, right? So if you can grow to love the process of learning, then doing research is just answering these questions that you have, right? So when we do it ourselves, like when I do research and I present research, I do that because I want other people to see and know what I found out, right? Because I think I found out something that could be useful. So I want to be able to tell other people about that, right? If you become an academic, then sometimes research has an end goal that is slightly less altruistic, right? Because, for example, we do faculty evaluations on campus, and one of the requirements is some scholarly activity, right? So if you don't do scholarly activity, you get a slap on the wrist. Or if you're not tenured yet, you may not get tenure, right? So you might lose your job. So sometimes we have to do research from a job perspective. And if you are a graduate student and you go on and you do a PhD, you have to do research to get a PhD. Now, you don't have to do research to get some master's degrees, not ours. You can choose to do a research project, or you can choose to do a capstone experience, all right? So, doing the research might lead to the degree, for example, okay? So we have different reasons for it. And we'll just have a look at some verbiage so that you can follow some of the reading, and also these are terms that you might come across in other research texts. So as I said, this one is relatively simplified and easy to read. If you want something that's a little more complicated about research, let me know. I can give you plenty of references for that. But basically, we can divide research into two groups, all right? We have very applied research, which is what I like to do. And we have what we call basic research, which is typically done in a lab of one form or another, and it will often look at the question just because they want to find the answer to that, right? So a lot of physiology researchers work in a lab and they just want to find out something about an animal or a body, right? And that's why they do the research. That's great, but that's not what I'm interested in. I like to take that idea and go, okay, so if it looks like that in the lab, what happens when it's in the real world, right? So applied research typically is done in a much more realistic environment, okay? So for example, you'll see a lot of data and literature on exercise physiology type things. So they'll take athletes into a lab and they'll run them on a treadmill and they'll be hooked up via a spirometer to a computer, and they'll do all this work and they'll get all this data and they'll make some conclusions based on that data. But does running on a treadmill in a laboratory that has a controlled environment mimic what happens when I run outside in the fresh air when it's hot or cold or windy or at altitude or bumpy or whatever, right? So that's kind of the difference between basic and applied. And then we also have another major division that is quantitative versus qualitative, which we will go into in a lot more detail in a couple of weeks. Quantitative research, the type I typically do, is Data collection where your data is numerical. All right, so I'm either measuring time, or I'm scoring something, or I'm using a Likert scale to get at someone's opinion on something, right? So the data that I collect is numerical. That would be quantitative. Qualitative research is quite a bit different, because instead of collecting numbers, they collect ideas and thoughts. And so their data tends to be much more verbal in general, right? They'll record someone interviewing, or they'll give people, instead of giving them a Likert scale, they'll give someone the question and then they'll write down all the answers, and the answers aren't numerical anymore, right? That's qualitative. And you can do mixed methods, so you can have, you know, one researcher who's qualitative and someone who's quantitative work together and collect two different forms of data about the same idea, okay? This is the first week of teaching after not talking for 4 weeks, and my throat is killing me. Okay. All right, I said we'd talk a little bit more about this idea of plagiarism. So you probably heard this term in undergrad, and were told not to copy your roommate's work or whatever, all right? It's a little more complicated than that, and it's a little more serious than that when you get to the graduate level, okay? If you submit a piece of work that is deemed to be plagiarized, if you're lucky, you'll get an F for that piece of work. If you're unlucky, you can actually get dismissed from grad school, depending on the on how dramatic, how bad, and how obvious the plagiarism is. Okay, doesn't happen very often, so I'm not trying to give you something to be dreadfully concerned about, but you do need to pay attention to the concept of plagiarism. All right. The graduate catalogue has a piece on plagiarism that defines what ENMU counts as plagiarism and you know, what to look out for. Your APA manual has quite a bit on plagiarism, and it's well written, so I would think the APA manual we tend to think of as just a formatting manual, and we forget that actually it's a writing manual, and there's a lot of really good information and tips in the APA manual about how to write more effectively, okay? So I would recommend reading those two. So plagiarism can be various forms, right? It can be the obvious. We worked together and we did this paper, and we both hand in a paper that's, if not identical, very nearly identical, right? So that's the most obvious one. The slightly trickier one is that when you are being asked by your instructor to write a paper and to use resources to support your argument in that paper. all right, then it gets a little bit tricky because you have to be careful to make sure that the person reading the paper knows that this statement that I make here isn't my idea. I got that statement from a paper I read. I didn't copy it from the paper, but the idea came from the paper, right? Well, if it's not your idea and you don't give accountability to the person that did the actual original writing, that's plagiarism, okay? So it can, and we'll do more about this as we work through the semester. So it can be quite a tricky skill, all right? You've got to be patient. You've got to remember it's a skill. If you haven't practiced it before, then why would you know how to get it right now, right? So you've got to be able to eventually read something in an argument, in a paper, all right? Think about it, reformulate it, and use that idea in your writing, and then give them credit for the idea, right? It's not good writing technique to have lots of quotes throughout your paper, all right? There is an APA format that allows you to quote something directly from a paper, but that is not good writing technique, all right? You should be able to read it, understand it, reword it, and then give that paper the credit for it. Okay? Does that, any questions about that at the moment? As I said, we'll be talking about this idea a lot during the semester, so you know, it will come up again, but I'm just trying to kind of introduce you slowly to the idea. Okay. Okay, APA, the dreaded, the beloved APA. So as I said, most people consider the APA to be a formatting manual, and it is, but it also is a writing manual. It's got all this other cool information that will help you be a better writer if you take the time to look at it more closely, all right? In this class, we're mostly going to use it to help you learn some of the formatting rules, because those are important in graduate school, okay? And there are, as I say here, rules for things you never, ever, ever would think of, all right? So the easiest thing to do is just assume that there's a rule for it, right? So after I write a sentence and I put a period, how many spaces do you have after that period before the start of the next sentence? Right? Guess what? There's a rule for it, okay? And it keeps changing manual to manual. When I did, and I'm going to get it the wrong way around now, it's gone back to 1, I think. So I did my graduate work on the 5th manual, and there was, I'm probably going to get this back to front, but I'm going to say there was 1 period, 1 space after the period, right? In the 6th manual, you had to put 2 spaces after the period. In the 7th edition, they're back to 1 period after, 1 space after the period. Okay? And I may have that back to front. It may have been 2, 1, 2, not 1, 2, 1, but you'll read the manual and find out. Okay? So as I said, just most of the time, don't even worry about learning the rules. Just carry the manual with you everywhere. Don't let it out of your sight. Okay? And just assume that there's a rule and go and look it up. because there's always a rule. Okay? Now, some of the rules, like how to write a reference for an article, the more you do, you do it so often that you'll get to a point where you can almost do it without double checking yourself to make sure you got it right. Okay? Same with citations. Okay? But the introduction of electronic work has complicated things a little bit. So the nice thing about the 7th edition is they have a much more comprehensive section on how to reference and cite electronic work, okay, which was well overdue. So there's lots and lots of rules, there's little tiny details to take account of, all right? And you may be sitting there thinking, what the heck, who cares whether there's 1 space or 2 spaces after the period, right? Well, you know, it's possible that you'll write a paper and get the spacing wrong and your faculty member won't deduct you for that, right? They may not even notice that you did it wrong. But the point is, you're a graduate student now, right? You want to produce graduate level work. And the APA manual in our field is part of being a graduate student. And so you should want to do it to the best of your ability, in my view, right? So, you know, is it a pain in the behind? Yes. Right? Do I wish we didn't have to follow APA? Yes. Do we have to follow APA? Yes. Right? I mean, if I want to submit an abstract to go to Hawaii for a conference and I want a free trip to Hawaii, then I have to get my APA right, because otherwise my abstract goes in the bin. Right? So, I'm going to talk you through APA references today. All right? There should be a space there. Chapter 9 in the 7th edition has the rules for doing an APA reference, and chapter 10 is full of examples of doing APA references. All right? So you want to pay close attention because depending on the type of resource you're using, the reference format can change, right? So if it's a journal, you italicize the title of the journal, but not the title of the paper. If it's a book, you italicize the title of the book. So you can't guarantee that the same formatting rules apply to every type of resource, okay? So, as I said, don't spend time trying to learn them, just keep your APA manual close to your heart, okay? All right, so chapter 9. When you go to chapter 9, you will see that they start by getting you to decide what category your resource is. All right? And then they tell you about the different elements. So we have typically 4 elements to start off with. We've got the author. So who wrote the thing? Okay? And it's important when you're doing your papers to pay attention to the fact that in APA we don't change the order of the author that is on the paper. We don't alphabetize the authors. So it's very different to say, what's the manual that the math people use? I should know that, I live with a math person. begins with an M, and I can't for the life of me.
MLA.
Sorry?
MLA.
MLA. Well done, that man. Okay, so in math, they alphabetize their authors, right? In HPE, we don't alphabetize our authors. We alphabetize a list of references, but not the authors within the reference, okay? And there's a reason for that, because in our world, the order that the authors are in represents their seniority on the paper and the amount of work that they put in on the paper, all right? So if I'm the 5th author on the paper, you can guarantee that I probably didn't do very much. I maybe proofread it, right? If I'm the 1st author on the paper, then typically that tells the reader it was my idea, I did most of the data collection, and I did most of the writing, right? So that's important, okay? Then we have the date, when was it published? We have the title, and we have the source, where can I find it? And the point of APA and the point of references and citations, and the reason that they're so picky about how you format them, is to make it as easy as possible for the person reading your work to find that article or book if they want to read it for themselves. All right? So that's why they're a bit finicky about it, is just to make it, it's kind of complicated for the person writing the reference, but it makes it really easy for the person reading the paper to go, oh, that sounds interesting, I'd like to read that. Look at the reference list. Okay, I can find that paper straight away. All right? Oh. Okay, so then it will go into these elements. So it tells you how to format each element. So how do I format the author element? What do I capitalize? What do I not capitalize? Okay? What if it's a group of authors, not just one author? Okay, then it tells you what to do with the date and how to format the date, tells you how to format the title, what do I capitalize, what do I not capitalize, right? And then we get to the source. So was it a journal, was it a book? Okay. Does it have a DOI? Hopefully, most recent research articles have a DOI. And if it doesn't have a DOI, can you find it online and find the URL that would take the reader straight to the article? All right? It gives you all that information. You just got to look for it. Right? Use your resource. Okay? And then we've got how to format a reference list. So if you do a paper and you've got 6 or 7 different articles that you use to help you write that paper, and you have to provide either a bibliography or a reference list, tells you how to format that. Right? So pretty much everything you need is in our baby Bible. Right? And then, having given you all the rules in chapter 9, when you get to chapter 10, they've got piles of examples to help you. All right? Now, if, like me, even with your glasses, you can't always tell whether there's 1 space or 2 spaces, you might have to use a magnifying glass. But they give you examples that you can just copy with your particular reference. All right? So it should be relatively straightforward, you would think, right? It never ends up being relatively straightforward. because you rush, or you don't edit your work, or you think you put a space in and you didn't put a space in, or you think you included the comma and you didn't, right? So, getting the APA absolutely correct in the reference takes practice. And that's all, it's just a new skill, right? It's like learning to do a cartwheel. Can't do a cartwheel the first time I try, but after 50, 60, 100 attempts, I can do a pretty good cartwheel, right? So be kind to yourselves, especially over the first few weeks, right, with these summaries. It doesn't mean don't use your manual and don't be precise, but if you make an error, you make an error. That's why you're coming to class, to learn how to not make the error, right? If you didn't need to come to the class, I wouldn't have a job. So I'm very happy you have to come to the class, okay? And again, remember, you can always send me a draft, ask me to look at it and give you some feedback. When we're reading research, there's almost always, I say almost always because we have come across some papers that don't, but typically, if you're reading a journal article of one form or another, it will have either a purpose statement, so it will say the purpose of this paper was, or the purpose of this research, or the aim of this study, or the reason we did this, right? There'll be some statement that tells the reader the original question, that the original purpose that the author had for doing the research. Okay? If it's a qualitative paper, they tend to not use a purpose statement the way quantitative researchers do, because they're much looser in their data collection. They'll go in with an idea, but they don't necessarily tie it down until they're collecting the data. Quantitative person would never do that. Like, everything is upfront and tight before you go out and collect the data. Okay? So that's one of the big differences between the two types of research. But a qualitative research paper will often have what they call a research question. Right? So it's similar, it just maybe the boundaries are a little more flexible for them. Okay? So when you're thinking about this for yourself, and we'll go over this again next week, all right? It's got to be feasible, so it's got to be doable, given the resources you have where you are or Eastern has, right? So the example I typically give for this is, you have this great biomechanics question, you want to know the force output of the last step on a triple jump or something like that, right? Great question, but we don't have a biomechanics lab and we don't have a force platform. So collecting that data, you'd have to go to UNM or to Tech to collect your data, because we don't have that. So that wouldn't be a very good question to pick for this class, because what the department want me to do in this class is make sure that at the end of the class you have a question that if you wanted to go the thesis route and collect data and do a research study to get your degree, you've got a question all ready to go. Right? So the biomechanics question might be a great question, and I might go, you can't use that because you wouldn't be able to collect that data here. Right? Original, I already talked about. It's got to be unique in some way. It's got to fill. So if you read, you go, oh, I really love softball, and I'm really interested in training for softball players, right? And I got 4 papers that I find when I put those search terms in, and I read these papers and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting, but they didn't tell me this. Then that might be your question, right? The thing that's missing is the original question, right? And don't worry too much about it being significant. That really isn't very crucial. It's very crucial if you're in a PhD program. Less crucial at the master's level, all right? And we'll help you with this. That's why the faculty are here. Okay? If you are reading quantitative work, then they're going to talk specifically about independent and dependent variables. If you are reading something that's more qualitative, they might talk about themes or factors or things like that. They use different terminology. Again, they're a little more flexible. It's a bit more subtle in a way. The independent variable is going to be the factor that you're manipulating. The dependent variable is the thing that you're interested in. So I've got a group of athletes and I want to know whether sprinting up and down the hill makes them stronger than sprinting on the flat, right? So my dependent variable there would be strength, right? I'm interested in finding out which program makes the athlete stronger. My independent variable is the program, the training program. And then there's 2 levels, what we call 2 levels of the training program. There would be the hill work and the level work. All right? And again, we'll go over this idea multiple times, so if it's sounding a little peculiar, don't worry, we can come over it again. If you're going to do something that's quantitative, or if you're reading a quantitative paper, those variables should be identifiable in the problem, right? So when it says the purpose of this study was to blah, 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 you should be able to go, ooh, there's the independent variable and there's the dependent variable. All right? When we get to doing purpose statements ourselves, you want 1 dependent variable and preferably only 1 independent variable. I might let you go to 2 if you can make a good argument for it. The more variables you have, the more complicated things get. So at the master's level, we try to keep it relatively simple. 1 DV, 1 or 2 independent variables. Any questions? You're all very quiet. Either I'm brilliant or I'm talking gibberish. Sorry? No questions? Okay. Hopefully that doesn't mean I'm talking gibberish. Okay. What have we got here? 5:45. Everybody all right? Does anybody need a toilet break? Before we go on to do the article summary information. You can't hear me? No, my mic is working. Sorry, Dion, I just saw that. Where is the speaker setup? Let me see. Okay, so you could check there, that's the simple place to check. If you click on the cogwheel down in the right-hand corner, there's a speaker volume setting there. So that's the most obvious one. Okay, you can also try going to your settings down in your start menu and go to the sound there. Make sure that you've got the right output device highlighted, and then check your volume on that continuum as well. Those are the only two options, being not a tech person, those are the only two options I can come up with for you. If those don't work, I would recommend that you contact the Distance Education Learning Help Desk. When you go into your Blackboard and you're in your welcome page in your Blackboard, I think over on the right-hand side they have a box that says Distance Education Learning, and they have a help desk number. You can call them, they're brilliant. They can answer anything you ask. Don't call the regular IT help desk, they're hopeless with Blackboard and Collaborate problems. All right, so if you've got an issue with Blackboard or Collaborate, you really want to call the Distance Education Learning Help Desk. Okay? I don't know if either of my two options help you, but those are the only two things I know how to do. Sorry. Okay, are we continuing? We don't want to take a break. No one's yelling at me, break, break. So I'm going to assume we keep going. Okay, so for the first few weeks, I'm going to give you an article for you to summarize, because I don't know what your interests are yet. I'll try to pick a variety of different articles so that you get not just what I like reading, right? So I'll try to find a nice variety of articles. And to try to help you out, I've got this template set up, all right? But there are some rules for the template to keep you within some boundaries, all right? So first off, this summary, I think, can only be 300 words or less, not including the reference. Right? Ignore the reference, but the rest of the summary. So you're going to have a whole research paper that you have to cut down into 300 words or less. Okay? This is not easy to do. So I don't want you to get too frustrated. I certainly don't want you to be getting upset or worried about it. It takes practice. Right? I can't say that often enough. It's just a new skill. You cannot expect yourself to get it right first time. All right? If you do get it right, yay, super. But don't put yourself under that kind of pressure, because it will take all the fun out of this class. Right? You've got to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room here. It's a new skill. Okay? So you'll notice at the top that there's a little note up here. As you dig into your APA manual, you'll find that when you write a paper, your paper has to be double-spaced, right? The reference has to be double-spaced. I'm going to ask you to break that rule when we're doing the summaries in the templates. My reason for that is I want to keep your summary on one page because that's much easier for me to look at and give you feedback and not have to keep chopping backwards and forwards between different pages to see what you did where. All right? So we're going to use regular single spacing. All right? On this template, we have multiple lines down to the bottom. All right? And you're allowed to type 2 rows of letters in one box. Right? So, for example, just need a keyboard to do that. For example, I can type now when I get here, because it's a Word document and I can't fix the row, right? You could keep typing. I don't want you to do that. Please don't do that, all right? You're going to stop after 2 rows, and you're going to take the next 2 rows, and you're going to type those in the next box. And then you're going to take, if there's another row, you're going to go to the next box. All right? So only 2 lines of writing per box, per row of the template, please. All right? That does a couple of things. It means that it's relatively neat and tidy to read. It also will keep you under 300 words because from type of article downwards, you can't do 2 lines in each of those rows and go over 300 words. So it helps you meet one of the rules of the assignment. Now, if at any point, right, let's say the purpose statement only takes 2 lines, and so this row is empty, right, this row here. I do like this version of Word that they have on here. Right, so this row is actually empty, doesn't have that writing in it. And you get to your participants and you're describing who the participants in the paper are, and you've written 2 lines and you still want to say something, right? You can steal that empty row and move it down to participants. I don't mind if you move rows around, but you can't add an additional row. All right? So how do I know what the type of article is? Well, I go to my APA manual and I look at, which says, there it is, page 4. And there's a heading that says type of article. Right? So you can have a look at that information, look at the paper you're reading, say which section does this paper fit under? And that's what you put there. Right? And the reason I ask you to identify the type of article isn't that typically if you were writing a summary you would put that in, because you wouldn't. Right? Later in the semester we won't include that piece of information. But right now, as a newbie, right, you need to learn to be able to identify what type of article you're reading. Right? Is it quantitative? Is it qualitative? Is it a literature review? What is it? Right? That's why that's there. The purpose statement goes next, and the purpose statement is going to be a rule breaker, because typically you're not allowed to copy and paste from the paper into your own paper, all right? But we're going to break that rule for the purpose statement, because if you reword it and you reword it slightly wrong, then what you're saying the paper about would be incorrect. Okay? So for the purpose statement, you can literally find the purpose statement in the body of the work. You cannot use the abstract. Right? And I'll come back to that when we've gone through the template. In the body of the work, you need to be able to skim a research paper and find the purpose. Right? That's what this exercise is going to help you do, so that you don't have to read every single research paper word for word for word. You can find the highlights by reading and skimming, because you've learned to identify what the highlights are. Okay. Purpose statement. Research method or design. So in that layer here, you're looking for the plan for the data collection, right? So how many times, for example, did they collect data, right? Did they just collect a survey? Or did they run a test and then do an intervention and then run another test and compare those results? That would be a pre-post design, right? Or it could be a survey design, or other types, right? So there are not very many different ones that you'll come across, but that's the information that you're trying to tease out here. When I look at this paper and I look at the data collection, before they went and collected the data, what was the kind of plan, the timeline? Okay. Participants, what do you want in the participants? Okay. So, when you get to the participants, you want to look back at your purpose. And you want to give the characteristics of the participants that make them relevant to the purpose statement. So, for example, if the purpose statement says the purpose of the study was to identify which training program produced more strength in softball athletes, right? No, not softball athletes, let me change that. Basketball athletes, right? And when you read the paper and you're reading about the participants, they say, oh, we had some male basketball players and we had some female basketball players and blah, 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 right? When you get to your participant characteristics, unless you've got plenty of words available, right, you don't have to put that there were 10 men and 12 women. You can just say there were 22 athletes of this age. Because in the purpose statement, they weren't looking at boys v girls. They were looking at basketball athletes. All right? You often will want their age, because depending on what the data was they were collecting, their age might play a role in the results that were garnered in the study. Right? You might want the country or the area of the country, but it depends on what the data collection is, right? So if I'm doing a study on baseball, and the study was in Japan, not America, I might want to let the reader know that these participants were Japanese, not American, because that might change. Again, it depends what the question is, but the fact that they come from Japan, the culture is different, personalities are different, training programs may be different. I don't know anything about baseball, you can tell, right? Equipment may be different. Ryan's sitting there going, right? I don't know. Okay, so it might be important that the reader knows that these baseball players were in Japan, not in America. Or it might not be important, in which case don't include it. Right? You have to make some decisions based on reading the paper. Procedures is it's like a baking recipe, right? First the authors did this, then they did this, then they did this, then they did this, then they did this, and here's the data, right? So this is literally, I don't want you to bullet it like that, I want you to write complete sentences, but what you're looking for is take the methodology of the data collection and highlight the key points that relate back to the variables in the purpose statement. Right. Next section is data analysis. So this one can be tricky if you've not had a stats class or if you've not read a lot of research before. What I want you to identify here is the statistical analyses that they use to analyze the data. Not the software package they used. I don't care if they use SPSS 14.7. It's irrelevant what software package they used. Right? Because all the software package does is run the analysis and spews out the numbers. And the way that t-test is calculated is the same in every software package. So the software package is irrelevant. The fact that they used a t-test is relevant. Right? Because as you get better at reading the research, you might read the abstract, which is the author's version of the summary template, right? And they say, oh, we did a chi-square test on blah, blah, and you're like, wait, a chi-square test wasn't the right test to do on this kind of data. I'm not going to waste my time reading this paper. Right? Because why would you want to read a 12-page paper and then it's kind of blur because the statistics were wrong, right? And you would think that that wouldn't get published, but it can be, right? It does happen. Okay. Results of the analysis they ran on the variables that are in the purpose statement. So if we go back to the basketball example, right? You may read statistical analyses and results that compare what the men did to the women. But if that purpose said basketball athletes, that isn't a key highlight, men and women, right? What was the results for the athletes as a group? That's the key to answer the purpose. Bless you. And the research design method, the participants, the procedures, the analysis to some point, but don't worry quite as much about the analysis, and the results should all be in your own words. These are not sections that you can cut and paste from the paper. I want you to read the paper, hopefully understand some of the paper, and be able to pick out the highlights and reword them for yourself. Right? The conclusion is another rule breaker, like the purpose. You can find one sentence that tells you what the authors think they found in their results in relation to the purpose, and you can copy and paste that sentence here. So why am I letting you break the rule? Because if you try to reword the conclusion and you get it a little bit wrong, you could say something that wasn't really what the authors told the reader, and that would misrepresent what the authors say they found, right? So at this point in your career, when you don't have a lot of practice at this, copying the purpose statement and the conclusion means that you're not at risk of changing the meaning of the authors. Plus it makes your life easier. Right? One sentence though. One sentence for the purpose, one sentence for the conclusion. Questions? So again, I want you to think about this task from a learning perspective, right? A, you may not ever have done this before. So it's not going to be easy. It's not brain surgery, right? But it's a little bit tricky. It takes practice to get it right, okay? 2, we're going to stick to the rules. If you stick to the rules that I've given you today, and just, okay, what did she say goes in the procedures? Okay, the procedures is like the to-do, the recipe for the methodology. What are the key things that the authors did to collect their data? Okay, I can find those, right? Once you've done a couple, they're not that difficult. It's starting, especially if you haven't done it before. It's like, oh my God, I have to take this great big article and cut it down into 300 words. How the hell do I do that, right? Follow the rules, 2 lines per row. You can't go over 300 words. Right? Questions? Eric, I know you have questions. Eric's hiding from me. I don't even see what. Okay. Oh, I see Devin had to go to another meeting. Okay. I hope it is. That's the idea. Eric, I'll message you to set a time. Okay. Good plan. Good plan. I'm happy to do that. As I said, the first one, it's not, I'm probably going to have to resort to an old one and just recycle it because I've got a deadline that I've already missed that I'm still working on. So it may not go up tonight, but it will go up tomorrow morning. I'll put up the article, and you know, as I said, if you do a draft and you want me to take a look at it, by all means. If you've got questions, you could always use the discussion board for a question if it's about the assignment, because then when I answer it, everybody can see the answer and it helps everyone. If you want to make an appointment or anything with me, like Eric is saying he wants to set a time to meet with me, then do that through email, obviously, and we can have a chat. Yeah. I think the most important thing is not take it seriously. I'm not saying don't take it seriously, but take it a little bit easy on yourself. Like you would with your athletes or your PE students, right? If you introduce a new skill in the gym, you wouldn't be standing there beating them up and yelling at them because they didn't get it right the first couple of times, right? You need to apply that same approach to yourself, learning a new skill. Okay? I think that's probably the best way I can say it. Because for some of you, if you've had to summarize articles, or if you've been in the program last semester and you've taken classes with other instructors and you've already done some, reading research and having to summarize it and use it in your papers that you submitted for another class, then the template won't be so overwhelming. But if you've never done anything, then it's easy to look at an article and go, oh, go on. All right. Okay, Vicente. No problem. I think I'm pretty much done actually for this week anyway. This recording, I don't know how long it takes to turn over, but the recording, I was going to show you where to find the recordings. Let me do that quick because it's not the most obvious. Okay, up in the top, when you're in your Collaborate classroom, up in the top left-hand corner is a little menu thumb button, right? When you click on that menu thumb, when you first go into the Collaborate room, it will give you the option to go to Collaborate recordings. Don't think it does when I drop it down. No, not when we're in a classroom, it doesn't give you that. But before you go into the classroom, if you click on that menu in the top left-hand corner, there will be a Collaborate recordings link. You can go there, put the date of the class you want to watch, and it will pull up the video recording of the class. Okay? So you've got, you can go and watch this class again if you can't remember something I said, or you can put a question in the discussion board and I can answer it there, whatever strategy suits you better. right? Okay, so I think that's it. If you were having trouble with microphones or anything, or sound, please talk to the distance ed people. They are hugely knowledgeable about how Blackboard and Collaborate work, and I've never given them a question they can't answer. So usually it's something relatively simple, and it's just that we don't know all the ins and outs of where to find everything. Okay? All right, well, have fun with it, all right? And if you're in Portalis or near here, enjoy the lovely warm weather we've got for the next couple of days, even though it's environmentally probably very unsound for it to be in the 60s at this time of the year. I can't say that I mind the 60s at this time of the year. So yeah, enjoy. Get in touch with me if you got questions, and I will see you next week. Okay? All right.